Okay, you ready?
Yeah.
We are now coming out of executive session. No decisions have been made on the action of matters discussed in executive session. Do I hear a motion to?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. Oh, thank God.
Welcome to Alabama City Council. Today is Tuesday, October 22nd. This is great to see a lot of public participation in a meeting like this. It means everybody is invested in our community. I'd like to acknowledge both the members of the press and the public are duly notified in accordance with the Freedom of Information Act. Please feel free to join me as I say a prayer to be followed by the Pledge of Allegiance and then roll call. Dear wise and loving Father, I thank you on behalf of all who are gathered here tonight. I thank you for everything you have blessed us with, life itself, our health, and for this island paradise we call home. And Lord, this being Breast Awareness Cancer Month, look over and strengthen all women who've gone through or who are going through breast cancer along with their families. I ask you to strengthen and heal as you see fit. Lord, be with every woman and family who is sick and encourage them as only you can. And please, Lord, I ask you to look over our residents, our employees, our families, and our visitors. Lord, please look over and protect our brave women and men who serve our country in the military or in our public safety department who look over and protect us 24/7, 365. We thank you for our liberty, our freedom of speech, and I ask that you for your guidance and wisdom in our governing our island to work together in making the right decisions that affect our residents for not only now, but for future generations. It is in your most blessed name I pray, amen.
Amen. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Interim City Clerk Nicole Deneen, roll call please. How long is going to be?
Councilmember Smith. Here. Councilmember Val.
Here.
Councilmember Kinghorn. Councilmember Ward.
Here.
Councilmember Rice.
Here.
Councilmember Buchanan.
Here.
Councilmember Moy.
Here.
Councilmember Ferenz.
Here.
Mayor Carroll.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Thank you. Okay. Tonight we have several new employees.
Oh, yeah.
And in order to swear them in, we need to have a motion to approve these employees.
So moved.
Second. Any discussions? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
What I'm going to do is ask the first one to come up and join me up front. It'll be Ron Hanna. It's kind of neat who we're swearing in tonight, all our local people. How are you? Good. Don't be nervous. This is easy. If you would. Right hand in the air. I, Ronald Hanna,
I, Ronald Hanna,
do solemnly swear that I am duly qualified,
do solemnly swear that I am duly qualified,
according to the ordinance of the city of Isle of Palms,
according to the ordinance of the city of Isle of Palms,
to perform the duties of the position to which I have been selected,
to perform the duties of the position to which I have been selected,
and that I will,
and that I will,
to the best of my
to
abilities,
the best of my abilities,
discharge the duties thereof,
discharge the duties thereof.
so help me God.
So help me God.
Don't get away now, I'm going to talk about it. Ron is a Charlestonian native who has been involved in public service since childhood. He started with the community services projects and Boy Scouts before volunteering as a sheriff's deputy with Richland County and a member of the South Carolina State Guard. He is a two-time graduate of the College of Charleston, not only once, with an undergraduate degree in political science, minoring in criminal law and society, and a master's degree in public administration. After attending his MBA, Ron employed with the city of Aiken as an urban planner before returning to the Lowcountry to work for Berkeley County, where he served until recently as a project manager for economic development. Ron is very busy this past month as he recently celebrated his 1-month wedding anniversary. Congratulations. You're a week ahead of me. He was married on September 21st to Rachel Korenko, followed by an incredible honeymoon to Ireland and the Czech Republic. Wow, pretty good. Congratulations. Welcome aboard. Is LD here? He's on a call.
He's on a call, yeah.
You can't bring him in bunker gear? All right, we have a fireman who was going to be sworn in tonight, but we had an emergency call this afternoon, so we'll get him next month. Thank you. We actually have 3 firemen who are coming in, but everybody was in different positions tonight. Moving on, reading of the journals of the previous meetings. We had 2 of them, a regular meeting of September 24th and a special meeting of September 26th. Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Yeah. Any discussions or additions or deletions? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Unanimous? Citizens' comments. Do we have the sheet from the comment?
Yes. Oh, thank you, Donovan.
Thank you, sir. How you doing? First up, Wendy Kelly. I know I saw her here. Here she is.
Welcome to my TED Talk. Just kidding. I just came to talk about the ordinance that we're talking about, banning smoking on the beach. Can everybody hear me? And to register my feelings that I am 100% for banning smoking on the beach, mostly because of the litter issue. Not to mention the smell, but the litter is a bigger issue. I did a little research into it and found out that each cigarette butt has arsenic in it, has lead in it, and it's contaminating anything basically that it touches. God even knows what if animals are eating it or if it's going into the water. And the other issue is the cotton that seems like it would be biodegradable, that is the filter's made out of, is not really cotton. It's a cellulose product, acetate cellulose, something like that, and it's plastic. So that's like 10 years that it takes to decompose. And that's just, I just find that unacceptable. And also, most of the trash that is found on everywhere actually in the world is the vast majority is cigarette trash. So I just feel like we've all, been out on the beaches and cleaning things up. And I know that there are people who say that they're people that they know who smoke, they take all their butts with them and they don't litter. And I know that there are people who do that. But if everyone did that, we would not be picking up the butts on the beach all the time. So that is it. Thank you.
Thank you. I should say beat Santa, but I'm going to say Howard Over.
Beat Santa. Good evening, everybody. My goal is to come down to the beach and find nothing. Unfortunately, I can't do that. I find some stuff. And this year off the beach, I have picked up only 4,346 cigarette butts, cigar tips, cigars off of the beach. 4,346. And to me, that's unacceptable. Imagine a family driving 3 hours, bring their kids to this lovely beach, set up their chair, the blankets, the kids are playing, and there's cigarette butts everywhere. All of a sudden, you're downwind from some guy smoking. It's terrible. I know that with the smoking, there's the associated trash that comes with it. The plastic wrapper. There's going to be a ban on plastic. The paper carton that comes in. The cigar package, which is plastic. The e-cigarette pieces that are plastic and metal. And then on top of that, we find cigarette lighters on the beach. So it's all related trash. The problem is when someone's on the beach, having a cigarette in their mouth is not the problem. When they light it, that's a fire. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, fires are illegal on the beach already. It's illegal to have a fire on a beach. So lighting a cigarette is a fire. That's against the law right now. So, making another law, that would be, but we can add it on to something or enforce what's there already would be important. And I think that the whole thing with the cigarette ban, it should be all public areas down here, just not on the beach. But are you allowed to have a fire on Ocean Boulevard? I don't think so. I'm not sure the laws of the city, but I know they're on the beach. And when I'm down there picking up stuff, I talk to people, try to educate them. But like the lady said ahead of me, there's plastic involved with the cigarettes, and the plastics don't go away very quickly. Now, in my walk down here this year, 23,472. That's 23,472 cigarette butts I picked up totally this year down here. Ocean Boulevard, municipal parking, and the beach. If I eliminate the beach numbers, that means there's 19,115 cigarette butts I picked up off of Ocean Boulevard and municipal parking. Where do those cigarette butts end up on a heavy rain? In the water system, and they either go to the waterway here, or they go to the beach or the ocean. So they end up someplace. So, and again, right on the package it says it's going to kill you. It tells you right up front it's going to kill you. But the unfortunate thing is the sea life, seagulls, turtles, other sea life can't read the package. So by us preventing or enforcing a no ban on smoking, we're going to help sea life, and guess what? We may save someone else's life from stop smoking down here. But the one thing is, I'm a non-smoker, but the last thing I can't be around, my doctors have warned me, being around secondhand smoke. So, but that number of 4,346 cigarette butts off the beach, and that's just me. I know when I'm doing the beach sweeps Monday nights, there's many other people picking up cigarettes, and I don't have those numbers at my access. But that's way too many cigarette butts off the beach. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Howard. Sandra Hines.
Hello. Nobody has stronger feelings about smoking than I do. My father died from small cell lung cancer, and I took care of him till the day he died and waited for over an hour for the funeral home to come and carry his body out of the house. With that said, I'm against enforcing another ban in this city. I think we have laws on the book that will take care of what we have if we have enforcement. If we don't have enforcement, enacting another ban isn't going to do a bit of good. There's a state law on litter, which includes, if you read in the print, cigarette butts under 25 pounds of trash is enforceable by $25 fine up to a $100 fine and 8 hours, which is a must if they're convicted. The judge has to assign them 8 hours of trash litter pickup. Enacting another ban is fine. It's not going to do any good if you don't have people enforcing it. My thing is we should have, if we need more people enforcing it, we should have people on the beach enforcing the litter. I've seen people litter. I can't do anything because if I tell a police officer he can't give them a ticket unless they see it. So what good is a ban on cigarettes going to do? It's already a ban in public places. You can't smoke. What are you going to do?
Thank you, Sandra.
That's your address.
Elizabeth Shirley.
Mayor, if you would remind...
Name and address.
Yes,
I'm
please.
sorry.
Thank you.
That's okay. Elizabeth Shirley, 3 Abalone Alley. I'm going to be brief and not redo what everybody else has said, but I was convicted today, Susan, and a couple people. We've been talking about it throughout the past couple of years, and really never paid too much attention to it until we started doing the pickup trash on the beach and that kind of thing, and just realizing, just exactly how many cigarette butts were on the beach. I was convicted today because I was just thinking, well, what am I going to say? I was a smoker. I smoked until I was 27 years old, and I know better. now, and I think we all know better. I remember Smokey the Bear, telling us not to litter and, light fires and be careful with, the Indian crying, when we, on the TV and that kind of thing. And, we continue to litter, and I think sometimes people just don't think about it. And, I was riding my bicycle down the beach the other day and had gum in my mouth, and I was, I'm tired of this gum, and I just put it on my hand and just put it on my hand, where I think 10 years ago I probably would have thrown it down on the ground. So my whole point is we know better, and I think it is time to be healthy. I think it's time for our beaches to be healthy. I think that we're doing it up and down the East Coast, and we're doing it in California and Hawaii, and it's just time that South Carolina got with the program. So I'm for the possible ban on smoking on the beach. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And for Nicole's purposes, Sandra was at 624 Carolina. Howard is at 445 Feathered Brush Drive, Monk's Corner. He drives here how many times a week? 3, 4? You, Howard.
How many times a week do you drive to Alabama?
I drive probably on an average 2 times a week year-round. I know in the summer months I come down 5 or 6 times a week.
Thank you.
I know rainy days I don't come down. Of course, I've been 5 weeks recovering from surgery, 3 weeks of other stuff. So I missed 8 weeks. I don't have the exact number of times I've been here.
I digress, I'm sorry.
And I know that in April and May, or March, April, and May, I'm down here 5 times a week.
Thank you, Howard.
Yep.
And Wendy Kelly lives at 3502 Waterway Boulevard.
Thank you.
Okay, Kelly Thorbenson, please name and address and association.
Kelly Thorvalson, South Carolina Aquarium, 100 Aquarium Wharf. Thank you for the opportunity to speak on the smoking ban. Smoking has well-known first and second-hand harms to humans, but studies have shown that even small quantities of cigarette butts in the ocean can be fatal to marine organisms. Cigarette butts contain over 150 toxic chemicals that are leached out into sand, water, and any animals that consume them. In addition, cigarette filters are made of plasticized cellulose acetate. You just heard that. And when they enter the marine environment, they break down into microplastics, which are known to be consumed by plankton and larval stages of marine life. Litter data collected on the Isle of Palms beach, this does not include any of the streets, beachfront only, in the last 6 months shows over 11,000 cigarette butts and over 12,000 cigarette-related items if you include those cigar tips and cigars and other items. And this data, over 11,500 cigarette butts, is only derived from organized sweeps in various locations on the beach, only a couple or a few times a month. So it's really a tiny snapshot of what's actually happening with cigarette litter on the beaches. Litter laws I've been in this litter space, working in this litter space for 4 years across the state of South Carolina. Litter laws are extremely hard to enforce simply because people don't litter in front of cops. So you might not see a cop lurking behind you, but most people do, and they're very cognizant of who is around them. So across the state, litter laws are very, very hard to enforce. Nationwide, more than 300 coastal communities have banned smoking on their beaches. So this is not a new type of legislation. Over 300 coastal communities. And those coastal communities that have spoken out about the successes of these bans report that not only is cigarette litter significantly reduced, but that it's self-policed when there's clear information provided for beachgoers. So it's very much a question of who is going to enforce and how are we going to enforce. But these communities are saying that enforcement is not an issue. Isle of Palms residents and beachgoers alike should find it unacceptable for these beautiful beaches to be contaminated by this much cigarette debris. And ultimately, reducing waste from cigarettes should be a priority. Thank you.
Thank you. Rusty Williamson.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Rusty Williams, and I live at 605 Carolina Boulevard, Isle of Palms. In an effort of transparency, I've smoked. I don't litter. Isle of Palms has a litter ordinance on the books. It's not enforced. They have not written a ticket, and I couldn't tell you how long, and neither can they. Why have another ban or another ordinance when you can't enforce the one that's already on the books? And if we're going to talk about secondhand smoke and quality of life issues, what about the propellants in sunscreens, gas exhaust from lawnmowers? I mean, where are we going to draw the line? How many more ordinances are we going to pass? Let's enforce the ordinances that are on the books now, and then maybe take baby steps. So we've got other things more important: City Hall, the public safety building, drainage here on the island, parking. Another thing I question is the ownership of the beach. I mean, does the city actually own the beach? Or where do the property lines for all the front beach houses, where do they end up in the sand? Is that private property? Can you tell somebody they can't smoke on their own property? So I'm not in favor of the ban. Thank you.
Thank you, Rusty. Caroline Bradner.
Hi, I'm Caroline Bradner, 131 Spring Street. I'm here representing the Coastal Conservation League. I want to thank you guys for letting me speak to you. And we just wanted to express the Conservation League's support for the ordinance you're considering to restrict smoking on the beaches. As you've heard, cigarettes are #1 litter item found locally, nationally, and internationally. They contain plastics and harmful chemicals that are not good for our waterways, our wildlife, or us. And enforcement of our litter laws is incredibly difficult because of what was mentioned. You have to see the person actually throwing the litter on the ground in order to write them a ticket. And these types of ordinances, like the one you're considering, do work because people self-police. And much like the plastics ordinance you guys have already done, people can understand what they're supposed to do and sort of take pride in it and police each other. It is much easier. And I just want to thank you for taking up the important issue. Have a great night.
Thank you, Caroline. We still have a couple of minutes before our 30 minutes. Is there anybody who didn't sign up? Yes, sir.
My name is Mike Cummings.
Come up here. Thank you.
My name is Mike Cummings. I'm a professor down at MUSC. I'm a resident of Mount Pleasant. I'm a frequent visitor to your beaches. I've sent you a letter basically talking about these laws being enforced all over the place. You've heard this. They're self-enforcing. And really just getting the signage. That's why you need a law, just to give yourself an excuse to put up the signs that people will follow. And if you want some, I'll give you a donation right out of my pocket to get you started with your signs. And you will actually put Isle of Palms, this will be a welcome sign for the many people that come down here, because your beaches and your lovely community is your economy here. So that's all I have to say.
Thank you. Going once, twice. There we go. We got 5 more minutes, so we're good.
Sure, I'll be quick. I'm Belvin Olsop. I live at 1129th Avenue, and I'm a frequent beachgoer. To me, it just doesn't seem worth it to have what is an enjoyable activity is smoking, impact both wildlife and the health of our beach in such a major way. I mean, the numbers of butts that have been reported is actually staggering. The microplastics involved, the toxicity involved, and I think that we've heard enough on the evidence that we have in other beach communities in terms of this working. I think that's very important to look at. The fact that this is not just a theoretical thing, that other beach communities have done this, is worked, and it hasn't been a problem enforcing it. So just echoing what others have said, thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, so ends our citizens' comments. Thank you all very much. Now back to our regular scheduled events. Reports and standing committees. First up, Ways and Means.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Ways and Means Committee met at 5 p.m. Tuesday, October 15th. The council chambers called meeting to order. Present was Mayor Carroll, council members Lorenz, Rice, Kinghorn, Bell, and Ward. Absent were Councilmember Smith, and Councilmember Moy. Staff present was Administrator.
You got it.
I can't say it.
Forgot.
Is that right?
No, but it's okay.
No, educate us now.
Fragoso.
Fragoso.
Try that.
Okay. Assistant City Administrator and Hannah Treasurer College is City Department heads. We approved the previous meeting's minutes, and there were no citizen comments. Debbie Stokes gave financial reports, all the materials provided to committee members was abbreviated due to IT difficulties in City Hall this week. She noted all departments are at or below their budgeting spending levels, and not a lot of spending occurred so far this fiscal year. We got revenues at 16% of all funds as of September 30th. Expenditures are 14%, but general fund expenditures are 22%, and that's like right in line. It's early in the fiscal year. First, we just finished first quarter. Revenues are slow as expected, both in the general fund and tourism funds. Property taxes to start coming in November through January. As I said, general fund expenses are at or below budget for all departments, below prior year to date. Other fund expenses, not much activity so far on large projects such as public safety building repair and fire truck purchase. Cash position is good. 96% of funds are invested at the LGIP at 2.17% interest rate. We're going to have expected spending on public safety, building, fire truck, et cetera, will reduce our cash balances by year end. The audit is underway from our independent auditors, and the Ways and Means, we had a recommendation about the approximately $2 million in excess of revenues over expenses. And some people call it the net positive net result. And I made a motion and passed to take the $2 million. We won't know the final numbers till the audit's complete, but $200,000 in general fund. That's what we normally do each year. We have a positive net result. And $100,000 in disaster recovery fund, in the balance into the capital projects fund to fund all the major projects we have going on at this time. Cash position is good. Like I said, it's $19,774,000 this year as opposed to 9/30/2018 of $16,113,000. And the cash position as a general fund expenditure, the target is 30%, and we're at 44%. So after that, we went to new business, and we had consideration of a recommendation from Public Works Committee to approve $16 million bond for decommissioning of Wild Dunes wastewater treatment plant and the consolidation expansion of the Forest Trail wastewater treatment plant, which shall be available only when the functions of the LIP, Water and Sewer Commission, become a department of the City of Isle Palms. Now, we had a lot of discussion about this, and Councilmember Friends made a motion to defer consideration of the bond for the Water and Sewer Commission for a few months. We have so much work to do on it, so much study to do, and that passed unanimously. Other things, just a couple of other things we did. We discussed consideration of engaging the services of First Tryon related to capital planning and potential debt issuance in an amount not to exceed $25,000, and that we withdrew that motion to approve because we want to get more information from First Tryon. So back to consideration of distribution of fiscal year 19 positive net result. The general fund expected general revenues and transfers in excess, expenditures and transfers out equal to approximately $2 million. In order to maintain a 30% target in the general fund, and the general fund should retain approximately $200,000 that previously stated, or 10% of the $2 million. The administrator I swear, I shouldn't be, it's only been 4 years, isn't it? Stated that fiscal year budget assumes $1,233,890 of the fiscal year 19 positive net results transferred into capital projects fund to cover expenses associated to the repairs of the public safety building, and staff is requesting direction from City Council how to distribute the difference of approximately $566,000. Then I made a motion to distribute $200,000 to the general fund, $100,000 to the disaster recovery fund, and the remaining positive net result of that number, capital projects fund. And passed unanimously. The no miscellaneous business. The next meeting, Ways and Means Committee, will be Tuesday, November 19th at 5 p.m. in the City Hall Council Chambers. The meeting was adjourned at 5:41.
So am I hearing a motion to approve the consideration of the following
Yes.
distribution?
Yes, I'm making that motion.
Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Any discussions? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Ayes have it, unanimous. Okay, public safety.
Yes, I'm gonna have to do it. I'm doing it from my phone because I have about 15 more hours on my iPad update. So, we're good. Public Safety Committee met on October the 7th.
You wanna borrow mine?
No, I'm good. Thanks, Mayor. I got it. 9 a.m., all committee members were present. Under citizens' comments, we had Mr. Jim Smiley. He came out and spoke about some of our parking issues and what he would like to see moving forward when we work with our parking plans. Mr. George Groves and George Page and Susan Page came and spoke about the structure that's next to them and some of the ordinances that we're working on according to that property. Mr. Jim Owens came and spoke and gave an attaboy to one of our firemen, Jason Smith, for his help and what he does with him and his family. Under old business, we had discussion of ordinance 2019-16, ordinance to establish new standards for dilapidated structures. We still, during that meeting, we raised some questions and we directed the city administrator to work with our legal counsel to determine which ways that we can go. We didn't want to move forward without having everything looked at by legal. We had an update on improvements for the 21st Avenue golf cart path. We're working on that. We still have to get some direction from the SCDOT, but we're going to go ahead and work with Public Works to put down some shell and to stabilize that shoulder area. Moving on, under new business, we had some discussion about reducing the speed limit on Palm Boulevard between 10th and 21st, and that topic got brought up because some of the citizens who live on the backside of the island here, on Hamlin Creek here, were having problems walking and traversing, going across Palm Boulevard. It was just, especially during the season where people, it's really congested, and right now the speed limit is 35 through there. So we're just going to have we made a motion to direct the staff to go to the SCDOT to conduct a speed study survey to see if it was even possible and what were further recommendations. And I'd like to go ahead and make that motion now that we direct the staff to request SCDOT conduct a speed study in the section of Palm between 10th and 21st.
Second.
Any discussion?
Yeah, just a comment in favor that we live on 19th Avenue and routinely have to cross in the stretch of street that you're talking about, and it's with a dog and a baby. It's a daredevil activity to cross the street. So,
and we've had another number of concerns about folks who live in that area between 21st and the curve, and people coming out of there and just hightailing it to the connector.
Yeah.
We just want to try to see what we can do to mitigate any further accidents. Because I know we've had some there, but any further complications.
Absolutely.
It's the merge sometimes has become a little bit of a road rage situation. I've seen people trying to cut people off from merging or not merge, So I'm wondering if that can also be, can they look at that as well? I mean, I know it's a speed study, but can they look at the actual way it works?
And that's exactly what they're going to do. They're going to look at the whole section between 10th and 21st to look at best flow.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Was there any consideration of olive palm
No,
on Front Beach?
no.
Even though we have crosswalks there, wouldn't that be this, it's 35 miles an hour there too, right?
Correct. And the discussion that came out with the chief was a lot of times if you're trying to control speed, they usually will not do that if you're just trying to reduce it. It's if you're trying to control congestion and in and out traffic and turn lanes and stuff like that, that's where the SCDOT comes in and they'll take an action and work on it. Otherwise, a lot of times they won't because they have a set.
Anybody else? Just to piggyback on Councilmember Rice, my house backs up to the pond, which backs up to Palm Boulevard, and I have two chairs out there so I can kind of watch the show.
Yes.
For the lack of a better term. Okay, hearing anything else, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Ayes have it, unanimous.
Perfect, thank you. Hey, moving on, we did have discussion of the 2019 beach parking plan after action assessment. We basically went through and talked about the parking throughout the island. I have a feeling that we're going to have another meeting, discuss what's coming out of planning, what's coming out of our assessments with beach parking, and make those adjustments at the time. Because we have to go through and amend our code to make any adjustments that we have right now. So, the chiefs gave their department reports, and those are listed online, and our next meeting is Monday, November 4th, City Hall, 9 a.m.
Great report, thank you very much. Public Works.
It's me. Public Works Committee met Thursday, October 3rd at 8 a.m. All members were present and all appropriate staff. We approved the previous month's minutes and we had no citizens' comments. Director Pitts gave his report for September, and despite all work being suspended for a week with Dorian, still numbers are up, and we did have 3 Saturdays where we had overtime for staff to work picking up storm debris. Storm debris is completely picked up now, which is great, and they did an amazing job, and I just can't say enough about Public Works staff and what they have to do and what they do with such a great attitude after these events. We did discuss in the after action staff meeting regarding Dorian, which is different than the after action for parking, that we do need to better communicate with the public about debris removal and what the schedule is for debris removal when we do have these storm events. Director Pitts has a map where he can explain his routes, and we need to add that to the website so people know when to anticipate getting their debris picked up. And I do believe we may be eligible for some FEMA reimbursement.
Yes, the presidential disaster declaration happened earlier this month, so we will be asking for reimbursement for labor and all expenses associated with emergency preparedness. And
Right.
FEMA reimburses up to 75%. In the past, the state government has kicked in to 25%, so we've made whole, but there's no news on that 25% as of yet.
But that's great news, so the overtime will be at least covered 75%. We got an update on Phase 3 drainage and small internal projects, and design and planning is underway for both of those projects. We discussed the Isle of Palms Water and Sewer Commission request for the $16 million bond for decommissioning the Wild Dunes wastewater treatment plant and expanding the Forest Trail plan, and we just discussed that in the meeting, so that has been deferred until next year. So we had sent it to Ways and Means, and then so now it is deferred. Moving on, we discussed the consideration of the smoking ban ordinance, which will come up later this evening. Our committee did recommend it unanimously and see it as a really, really positive step toward us being strong and coming out and saying how much we care about our environment and the beach, and that it's the right thing to do, and we're very excited that it's possibly going to pass. With that being said, we adjourned, and when are we meeting again?
November 12th, I believe.
November 12th
November
at 8
12th
a.m.
at 8 a.m. And that's my report.
Great report. Any questions? Hearing none, moving on. Recreation.
Recreation Committee met on October 7th in City Hall with our all of our members present of the committee, as well as our administrator and the Recreation Director, Paige. Much of our meeting, we discussed, we started a discussion about the possibilities of adding a pool at the Recreation Center. This was just an initial discussion that we expect to be looking at for over the course of several months, with the possibility of ultimately proposing a referendum for the voters to weigh in on whether that's something they would like to see. But for a lot of our discussion, this time we heard from Susan Stabini, president of the Wild Dunes swim team, who talked about the history of the swim team and some of its needs and its growing pains that they've been having within Wild Dunes. The island is actually an island swim team. It does not just serve Wild Dunes. It incorporates swimmers from kindergarten through 12th grade, from all throughout Isle of Palms, mostly from Isle of Palms, but is open to other neighboring communities. And they do lots of great things, but they are running into some difficulties in terms of what's possible within the resort, and the fact that they do not allow swim meets, which could put them at risk of being able to continue. Otherwise, we heard from Director Page and her departmental report. They've had some great activities going on and events, including the wellness, the wellness fair. And of course, they just recently did the Ghostly Tide Tales last Friday, which was a wonderful event on the beach for families oriented towards Halloween. They have the upcoming Halloween Carnival, is always spectacular, and will be on the 31st. And in addition to that, they managed to put on the Isle of Palms Connector Run and Walk, which is another spectacular event, and in spite of the rain, had really good attendance. Otherwise, we talked about, we learned from our administrator that we only received one proposal in response to our RFP for surfing lessons, and so we recognized that that was put out at around hurricane time, and so we are going to be reissuing that in hopes that we get some more interest. And otherwise, we also talked about the possibility of some awareness around our Arbor Day, which in South Carolina is actually celebrated at a different time to correspond with Good Times for Planting, which will be in December. Ahead of that, we will be trying to look at ways that we can encourage people across the island to be planting trees, which helps us with many things, including drainage. And given the fact that we lost some trees during Hurricane Dorian, seems especially appropriate this year. And that is all I have to report, and I cannot see when our next, I can't get my computer to work.
November 4th at 5 o'clock.
Our next meeting will be
November 4th.
November 4th. Okay. So here ends my report.
Good report. Any questions? Yes, sir.
Just another comment to speak very highly of our recreation department. They're also hosting our weekly farmers markets. So
yes.
tomorrow, be sure to go check it out. We've got some great vendors.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Hearing none. Personnel.
That's me. The Personnel Committee met on October the 1st, Tuesday at 4:30 p.m. It felt like it was 2 months ago. All members were in attendance, as well as staff. We started off with approving the meeting's minutes. We didn't have any citizen comments. And then we jumped straight into old business, which included final interviews for the vacancies for the Isle of Palms Water and Sewer Commission. Prior to this meeting in September, we interviewed 3 of the 5 candidates that had applied to be appointed to the 2 vacancies that we had. And just a little bit of education for everyone, because this is a real nuanced, weird thing. The Isle of Palms Water and Sewer Commission is an elected position. There are 5 seats on that commission. When someone moves from the island or resigns their seat, in this case we had 2 people move from the island, they're no longer legally allowed to serve on the Water and Sewer Commission because we want residents, just as your elected officials, to be local. So we had 2 vacancies due to people moving. When an elected position of that nature is open, our city code states that the city council appoints those positions. That's why we're appointing positions versus electing those 2 openings. Come election time in November, we have 2 open seats that we will be electing for. So don't think that this replaces those 2 vacancies that will be up for election in November, just because it's a little confusing and weird. We interviewed 5 phenomenal candidates. If anything else emerged about this process, it's that our island is filled with incredibly smart people, and it's pretty humbling to be in a room with them sometimes. So we had a really difficult choice, but we interviewed 2 of those candidates on our meeting, and I guess I'll jump to that part. We did make a motion in executive session. We kind of discussed the strengths and weaknesses, mostly the strengths of all of the candidates that were put forth. Going into this process, we met with the existing Water and Sewer Commission. We spoke with city staff, and we tried to identify what are the real strong needs out of candidates that would make the commission really improve. And so taking a lot into consideration, taking a really methodical approach to the interviews, we had a unanimous decision, and I would like to make this in the form of a motion to appoint Jan Anderson and Bob Hooper to fill the vacancies on the Isle of Palms Water and Sewer Commission.
Second.
Any discussion?
And I'll just say one more thing, and I bet Sandy was about to. Again, the caliber of all 5, I mean, engineers, professional backgrounds that are just, again, really humbling. And Jan and Bob had the qualifications that we really felt like we needed. So we're really grateful that we had so much interest in the positions, really grateful for Jan and Bob. There's 4 years remaining on both of these terms. These are 6-year terms, and we think they're going to do great stuff with the commission.
Sandy, did I hear you want to say something?
No, that's okay. You said it all.
Just before
They're
we
here
vote-
tonight. They're also here tonight.
Before we vote on this, I'd like to just give a little background. Jan has a bachelor's degree in mechanical engineering from Duke University and a master's degree in regional planning and civil engineering. And Bob has previously served on the planning commission, was a volunteer firefighter, worked for Thomas & Hutton as a senior CAD technician and designer. Before we vote, so hearing any other questions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Welcome aboard.
Have them stand up, please.
Yeah, would you please stand? Jan, Bob, stand so everybody can see you.
There you go.
Okay, moving on. We got an update on the hiring of the assistant city administrator, who we swore in tonight. So welcome, Ron. We're so excited to have you.
So excited to be here.
Good. We got an update on the annual employee appreciation event that was held last Friday. This is an annual event that we do to recognize the really hard work and fantastic staff that we have here. And I think the event went off really well. I don't know if there are any specific updates. I'll move on to we've got the piece of that with the Leal Hanberry in here as well. We have an annual award where we recognize a staff member who goes above and beyond the call of duty, really exemplifies the values that we really want our teams to espouse here on the island. And This year, our recipient of the Leola Hanbury Award was Russell Roper from the Public Works Department, and he received a cash prize. This award was established by a former council member, Leola Hanbury, who just was a phenomenal civil servant and was really dedicated to celebrating the phenomenal staff that we have here. And everyone in the audience is nodding their heads because we've all had interactions with our every single department. We just have the best family feeling staff. So really great award to give out. Desiree, do you have anything to add to that?
We had a little ceremony on Monday because unfortunately he called in sick on Friday when we were ready to make the announcement. So we had him over at City Hall and the mayor presented him with the award on Monday. And he just unassuming and so humbled by it and very thankful.
Thank you, Desiree. And then finally, we had an update on the City Council Orientation Training and Handbook, and there's some folks in the audience who are probably really excited about that. There's some folks up here that are really excited about that. But Desiree expects to have a final draft that we can start taking looks at by the end of this month. And then November will be sort of working drafts time, and by the time we have some newly elected officials, we should be able to all get on the same page from a training perspective. No miscellaneous business, and we will be meeting again on November 12th because the first Tuesday of the month is Election Day. So we'll be meeting a week later than usual at 4:30 or 5?
4:30.
At 4:30.
So ends your report.
So ends my report. And
Great.
There's a question.
Yes, just one question. Well, thank you for implementing this policy about training new council members. I'm really grateful for that. And I just want to know, is there going to be sessions in there concerning Robert's Rules of Order?
Oh, yeah.
Thank you
It's a
very
big
much.
10-4. Can we include older council members too?
Oh, yeah.
Including mayors? Thank you. Okay, moving on, real property.
Real property. Real Property Committee meeting was held 10 a.m. Monday, October 14th. All members were present, as was the administration. In citizens' comments, we had two citizens' comments. One, Patsy Hindeman, voicing her support for tidal wave, water sports, and also asking for an easier way to understand events at the marina. Scott Pierce spoke as well regarding questions for request for zoning change on the 1100 Palm Boulevard and voicing his concern about any potential to look at that further. There were no comments from the marina tenants. In old business, we were real time there. We had an update on marina items. I had asked, because I think there's a ton of community confusion, I had asked of Desiree Fregoso, did I pronounce that right? To kind of lay out by topic leases, procurement process, permitting, because there's a lot of confusion as to what's causing delays along the way. And I will state Desiree did an excellent job in walking through that. It's very lengthy, so I won't go through it here. But the process of trying to move forward and get permitting done with DHEC, OCRM, the Army Corps of Engineers is lengthy. It's not, purposeful delays on the part of council, and I think that serves the purpose very well in laying that out and explaining it. We moved from that topic to talk about the update on the public safety building rehabilitation project. Administrator Fregoso reported that we were $60,000 less than the estimates to date. Don't put that in the bank yet. We may spend it yet. But also we are out with an RFP to have, in essence, a third-party, I don't know, Desiree, you call him project administrator, but somebody that's overseeing the project on behalf of the city, independent of the contractors, so we don't replicate the problems that have us in this position right now. And those proposals are due on October 25th. We had an update on proposed hotel development at 1100 Palm Boulevard. This one's confusing. We had a developer approach the city and looking at what they could possibly do with the existing GC1 zoning, or would the council entertain any possibilities of a GC3 and a small boutique hotel. Some of you may recall that came before council just for the opinions of council, whether it was supportive or not. It went back to Real Property Committee. There has never been a definitive proposal from the developer for that. Therefore, there hasn't been anything in front of council. We did take a vote, but because it was not an actual item on the agenda, it was in essence a no vote, but unanimously said we were not interested in rezoning that property to GC3. So whether that goes forward, whether the developer continues to work with Douglas on something that conforms to zoning, we don't know at this point. But there's been a ton of confusion around it. Hopefully that clears some of that up. We moved on to discussion of potential projects for Charleston County Greenbelt Program, and our administrator asked that we give her a little extension of time. She's been a little bit busy lately between storms and IT issues, so we will have that at a later time. We had discussion on beach erosion at Breach Inlet and alternatives to address it. The city administrator has initiated some discussion with residents along that stretch of beach as to what could be done with a huge erosion problem, and the fact that we've got almost a mini island being created in Breach Inlet between Sullivan's and Isle of Palm. It's an exploration discussion. I think the residents there understand that if anything were to move forward, it would be a lengthy and complicated process, and important as to who's paying for it. Was that a good net comment, Desiree?
Yes.
So we're not anywhere near that. There was, we suspended the rules and allowed a resident to speak, and he said to make sure that if we're having any discussions around moving sand, that it's not a discussion only for the residents there that are affected, but it is the residents of the city, since it's our dollars, in essence, our beach restoration money that we'd be looking at. We moved on to update on recommendations from the Planning Commission regarding short-term rentals. We're expected to have recommendations from administration for the committee to consider next month. With that, there was no miscellaneous business. The next meeting of real property will be Wednesday, November 6th, and there was no executive session, and we adjourned the meeting at 11:18.
Any questions? I have one, and this might go back to Desiree as I say this. Concerning the beach erosion at the 100 block and Breach Inlet, and now it's been declared a FEMA disaster, is there any chance of FEMA funding?
There could be. We participated in the initial meeting about public assistance. They will be assigning a FEMA representative to the city, and we'll be having those conversations with them whether or not that area becomes eligible due to the erosion that may have been exacerbated as a result of Hurricane Dorian.
Sorry to put you on the spot like that. But
Oh, you're fine.
Thank you very much. Okay, moving on. Reports from city officers, boards, commissions. The Accommodations Tax Advisory Committee, the minutes are attached. The Board of Zoning Appeals, the minutes are attached. Planning Commission, the minutes are attached. Reports from special or joint committees, none. Petitions received, referred, disposed of, none. Bills already in possession, none. Introduction of new bills, resolutions, proclamations. Ordinance 2019-18, an ordinance to prohibit smoking in city-owned facilities, property, the beach, public beach access paths. This would be a first reading by title only. Is there any
Motion to suspend the rules of order and allow discussion.
second? Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Yes, sir. Discussion.
You don't want to hear what everybody else has.
Don't we need a motion for?
We did have a motion and a second, right?
To discuss.
Yeah.
Discuss.
Yes.
Okay. Questions, anyone?
I have a question.
Yes,
It seems unfortunate that our full committee is not here that recommended this. I don't know if we could defer this until next month, if we could still have a second reading in December.
We don't need December.
We do have a special meeting in December.
Correct. Yes, City Council has a special meeting in December where
Committees.
Yes, where the mayor announces nominations for standing committees and appointments.
Is it possible that we could add a second reading to this?
Yeah.
Well, you're gonna have the first reading first.
And defer, because our full committee is not here, the vote until November.
Well, I think right now we have a motion on the table and a second for discussion about,
And we have a quorum here.
and we have a quorum here.
No quorum.
Okay, so do you have any suggestions, questions, or?
Me?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, I have a lot to say.
Well,
Thank you. So, in terms of our proposal for a ban on smoking at the beach, I feel strongly that we have a responsibility with this issue, not just to our residents, but to the tens or really hundreds of thousands of people who visit our beaches, and to the wildlife that lives in our oceans and along our shores. 7 months ago, as we discussed the issue of harmful litter and debris on the beach, this council was visibly struck after seeing a collection of cigarette butts brought to us by Howard Hogue, who volunteers countless hours keeping our beaches and our island clean. And at that time, there was some consensus that we needed to find a better answer to pollution from cigarette butts. And over the course of the past 7 months, we have spent time and resources exploring and vetting this issue so that we can present the proposed ordinance to full council. Howard is an MVP of Isle of Palms Cleanup Crew, which I helped create 2 seasons ago. Isle of Palms Cleanup Crew does a weekly beach sweep during the busy summer season and a monthly sweep in the off season with the help of the South Carolina Aquarium and their conservation team. Most of our volunteers diligently record the types of litter they pick up. During the busiest times of the season, our volunteers will collect more than 2,000 pieces of trash in 1 hour, and that includes as many as 600 cigarette butts. So I want that to sink in. That's 600 cigarette butts that are very easy for us to pick up within an hour's time, pretty much at any point during the busy summer season at Front Beach. That's a really high concentration of cigarette butts in a small area, and that's also where we have a high concentration of people who are coming to enjoy the beach, to let their children play in the sand, in the tidal pools, and swim in the water. And in fact, as Kelly pointed out, we're not the only people doing sweeps. And this season, within 6 months, a total of 11,500 cigarette butts have been collected on Isle of Palms Beach, and we're just scratching the surface. There are plenty that do not get picked up, that remain within our sands or get washed into the ocean. And as we talked about, those cigarette butts contain toxic chemicals and plastic threads. This contamination of our beach sand threatens the health and wildlife of the people who come here. As we've also talked about, more than, or at least 317 U.S. municipalities have prohibited smoking on their beaches. That includes 3 in South Carolina already: Surfside, Atlantic City, and the lakeside community of TK. That statistic is actually 2 years old, so that number has likely grown as it has become a trend of more and more beach communities recognizing this issue of pollution. To be sure, there are South Carolina laws against littering, and I hear this come up frequently, that apply statewide. But, as we've also discussed, it's extremely difficult for law enforcement to detect someone in the act of littering, and I hope that our chief will have a chance to come up and talk about that. That's why, that is precisely why, because it is so difficult to enforce, why we should be considering this unique approach to one of our worst litter items. Because it is much easier, I think everybody can recognize, to spot somebody in the act of smoking. And everyone can recognize that, including the smokers, who will be more likely to self-police and comply with the law, making enforcement really not the same kind of issue that it is with our littering ordinances. And in fact, we've heard from communities that have enacted these that have seen great success and people abiding by the law once they're educated, and also great success in reducing the litter that is created from cigarette butts. Some have wondered whether this is the right time for us to consider this, but given the fact that our neighbors on Sullivan's Island seem poised to pass similar ordinances, and the fact within the next month or two, and the fact that others across the country are doing the same thing, I say the time is now. In addition, the messaging for this can be folded in with public education and signage that we are putting into play already with our other ordinances that take effect January 1st regarding packaging restrictions, which were passed unanimously by this council. It is a similar approach and logic, just a slightly different way of going about it. If we don't pursue this, we can count on tens of thousands of more cigarette butts, not an exaggeration, that we will either be picking up or that will be polluting our environment, and especially in high concentrations and highly trafficked areas. That's not okay. It's not good for our island on many levels, and it's time for us to do the right thing and take care of this now.
Thank you, Susan.
Thank you.
And Mr. Moore.
Thank you, Councilmember Smith. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This has been a tough couple of weeks, I think, probably for all of us. This is a very difficult issue. Anytime you have a decision that impacts directly folks that have an activity that they really enjoy, it's really difficult. And I find myself tending towards less ordinances. I've had, I think, some really wise, helpful citizens that are constantly reaching out to me, giving me advice regularly, weighing in on issues, and I'm very grateful for that. So please keep emailing me. And if you're not emailing me, bring it on. But that's what we're here to do. We're here to represent the residents in the community. And I've been trying to be more proactive than usual, actually, with this one because I think it's such a significant issue that we're facing. And I've been back and forth, in all honesty, on this issue throughout the course of the weeks. And because it's really difficult for me to say, yes, we need another ordinance. And you've heard a lot of the folks who are opposed to this, and what we're hearing is, why do we need another ordinance? Why aren't we enforcing this or that or the other? And I won't rehash some of the things that Councilmember Smith said about enforcement and some of the things that Kelly from the aquarium said as well, because I think they really articulate quite well the issue here. It's not that we're not trying to enforce the litter, it's that it's nearly impossible to enforce the litter ordinance as it's written. And I would echo Councilmember Smith, I would love to hear from the chief at some point during our comments. So as I kind of felt my way through, okay, what did the folks who elected me, what do they want me to do? Because that's who I'm representing. Personally, I don't smoke. I don't like to be downwind of someone who's smoking, but I also don't like to be downwind of somebody who's blasting loud music, and I'm not here to write an ordinance for loud music. So this is not about secondhand smoke. This is about litter. The secondhand smoke might be a benefit for those of us who don't like secondhand smoke, but this is about litter, and it's about what it's doing to our environment. And because we don't have the ability really to enforce litter laws in a meaningful way, that's what I think this ordinance is about, and I think that's really what the discussion should center around. So when I think about the electorate and who put me in the office, and I talk to people, the vast majority are on the side of we don't want smoking on the beach. We support the ban. Now, I'd said most of the people are non-smokers that are in my circles. I do have folks that I know voted for me who are smokers who don't support the ban. So I said, okay, if they're split 50-50, what do I do? What am I supposed to do? And here's how I made my decision. I said, what is the platform that I ran on? And what did I say I would represent? And for me, serving on council is about preserving the island. It's about the way of life that we have, trying to create a place where my daughter can grow up, where she can play on the beach without rolling around in cigarette butts. And from that standpoint, I think that unfortunately the ordinance is the only way for us to accomplish this goal of reducing litter. If there was another way, and I think we've racked our brains, we've spent months, you heard Councilmember Smith, it's been 7 months in the making. We've tried to think of alternative ways. The ordinance is a hammer, and you don't want to use it unless you have to. Unfortunately, this is such a pervasive, massive, significant issue that the ordinance is the only way that we see to address it. And so I'm very supportive of this. I moved from on the fence to I'm staunchly in favor of we need this ban. It's critical for the future of our environment, and it's the message that we need to send to our children. I think it's the hard book. I think it's easy to say no. It's easy to say we don't want this ban because you know what? There's no direct impact on somebody's life if we don't support the ban. So it's easy to say I'm going to vote no. It's really difficult to say we're going to do this because we are directly impacting people's lives. So I'm going to make the difficult choice because I think it's the right choice. And the only other thing that I'll say that I'll add is we have to be really careful about signs. So I appreciate the donation for signs, but we've got to be really intentional and very widespread in our coverage of education, but let's not add more signs. That's the one thing I heard loud and clear is I really support the ban, but I'd also support a ban on signs. That's my one caveat. I'm very supportive of this ban, but we've got to figure out a way to educate and communicate effectively.
Thank you, John. Anyone else? Yes, ma'am.
So I proudly support this. I think that, we're charged with protecting the island. That's really, it's our greatest asset, and we know that this is such an enormous problem. We were asked to come up with data. We have the data to support this because it is really pervasive, and anybody who has been able to walk the beach without seeing or picking up cigarette butts, I don't know, that is just remarkable because and this has been going on for years and years and years. I know for me, it's 25 years worth of picking up cigarette butts. So I am very proud that we are considering this. I hope it passes. It makes me very proud to think that Isle of Palms is really on the forefront of constantly doing the right thing where the planet, the environment, the beach is concerned. And I think we should be really, really proud of that. We need to continue to be leaders in truly walking the walk when it comes to we want a clean, safe beach. So, yes.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I've probably been on the fence more than anybody on this, and I've actually tried to put my 35-year-old hat on instead of my almost 65-year-old hat. To John's point, this one's tough, and I don't like ordinances that say ordinance, but I go back and forth, and I ask myself, how do we pass unanimously a plastics ban? And we can't, get some degree of unanimity on an issue like this. And I don't think it's so much as a litter enforcement as an educational campaign to stop it at the root cause. I don't think people are going to grossly modify their behavior. I don't think we're trying to legislate their health. But at the same time, we keep hearing compelling evidence that it is toxic to the environment. I'd almost ask myself, should we go back and revisit the plastic one and just remove it? Because I don't know how you enforce that. I don't know how somebody brings a plastic bag or a cup. We're not going to have the police descend. I've sat up here humoring myself, having spent some time in Asia. Singapore sells shirts that say it's a fine place to live, and it has chewing gum, jaywalking, littering, everything that you can get a fine for. I don't think that's what we're trying to accomplish. But, we've got a mayor that's championing the environmental causes and bragging about our leadership in plastics. And we've got an island next to us. And this is the thing that sent me over the top. I thought Sullivan's Island was going to defer this as well, but it doesn't appear that they are. So we'll either sit here passing this and moving it forward and have the island next to us doing it. And let's face it, what's going to happen? We're going to increase the volume of cigarettes on this beach because we're not going to allow them on Sullivan's Island. I don't think that's the outcome that I would want or for my kids when they ultimately have my house. So with that, I've got to say I've got to support it as well.
And yes, ma'am.
I've approached this a little differently. I don't think this is a for it or against it. I think we have two issues on the table. One, the number of cigarette butts on our beach. I think that we can purchase equipment that can rake the beach and that can take care of all of those cigarette butts. And I tried my darndest because everybody, or a lot of folks came to me and say, we used to do that. Bill Shupp used to have some kind of equipment that used to rake the beach and take all the cigarette butts up, but I can't verify it. So I'm not saying that that ever happened. But we do know that there is a $62,000 piece of equipment that can be used on the beach to rake up the cigarette butts. Now, is that going to stop secondhand smoke? No. I do think that we need to have a full-blown education process, but you don't do that with an ordinance. An ordinance isn't about education. An ordinance is about laws. And if you read this ordinance, you know what the fine is? $10 to $25. That's a cigarette pack. That's not an ordinance that's going to stop anything. So in my estimation, we should be looking at two things. We should be looking at a resolution and establish a month of education on the secondhand smoke issue and what we're doing on our beach by bringing these cigarette butts and what it does to our environment. You can have a full-blown marketing effort that not only does social media but print and television. We can be on that forefront of educating not just our community but the Charleston community on what is happening to our beaches because people are leaving their cigarette butts and are smoking on the beaches. That's an education. That's a resolution that can be passed. On the ordinance side, I think if you want to really stop that litter, then slam them with a $100 fine if they're seen throwing that cigarette butt. But also, back in the 80s, when I visited Southampton and East Hampton in the New York area, they had disposable cigarette butt retainers that when you walked onto the beach, if you were a smoker, they had, just like we have our pooper scoopers, they had a place where you pulled out a disposable ashtray, so to speak, and you threw them in the garbage cans. And they cut down on the cigarette butts, et cetera, et cetera. So I think there's other things we can do. We haven't looked at the other things we can do. We're slamming it into a law, an ordinance, when I think we can do other things. So will I vote for this as it's written? No, because I think we can do other things.
Thank you. Anybody else? Ron?
I do. I do have some questions about the law, and I don't know if we can have the chief come up and answer some of those.
Sure we can.
Or chief, if you don't mind. I mean, just
name and address, please.
I feel like I live at 30 J.C. Long.
License and registration.
Thank you, Chief. I mean, I brought you up here just because, I mean, obviously you're going to be, in the forefront of enforcing any type of ordinance that may pass. My question is, and probably to both of you, public beach starts at the end of, at the high water mark. So if you have somebody who's smoking in the soft sand, would you be able to write them a ticket for it?
Yes, so the city has held the position that anything seaward of the primary dune is the public beach.
Okay.
The city maintains the beach, trash. So yes, all of that is considered regardless of who owns the underlying dirt.
Perfect. Okay, that's a couple of questions I had. And as well as, but it doesn't include the rights, it doesn't include right-of-way, but it doesn't include Ocean Boulevard because the city owns it.
As the ordinance is written, it includes city-owned property, city facilities, and the public beach and public beach access.
Ocean Boulevard.
So Ocean Boulevard, the road, you mean Front Beach?
Correct.
Yes, that would include Front Beach.
Okay. And then it would also include the marina as well?
Mm-hmm. I'm sorry?
The marina?
Any city-owned facility.
Okay. That was it. One of the things I guess Chief, thanks. Yeah.
I would like for the chief to speak about his, he shared it with the Public Safety Committee. There were some questions about how it's going to be enforced, so while he's already there.
Before he gets away, let's finish our questions, and we may have more questions. Jimmy, do you have any questions at all?
I still,
I'm sorry. I didn't mean to take over.
Those are my top few questions that I had. I just wanted to define those areas. But we are and it has been brought up, we are charged with protecting the island, but we're also charged with protecting people's civil liberties as well. This ordinance is crazy. It's like deja vu for us, isn't it?
It is.
So
I know.
it's like this
It
came
really
up.
is.
Carol and I were on city council in 2008 when the law first passed, and we were on opposite sides then.
We still can be civil.
Yes, we can. But and those are some of the questions I had, and it comes down to a lot of it is the littering and trying to find ways to enforce the littering. A lot of this, we have problems with it. One great thing, that Mr. Hogue brought up is the fact of it's illegal to have a fire on the beach. So let me ask you this. If somebody is speeding and they're 2 miles an hour over the speed limit, it's illegal. But if they're 20 miles over the speed limit, it's still illegal. If they have a fire on a beach on a match, as opposed to a fire in a beach in a pit, what would be the difference in that? Are they both illegal? One just at varying levels?
I guess the correct answer to that would be yes, but what we have to be careful of is that fine line that we're going to be navigating. One of those is how the law was intended to be. We have to look at what the intention was.
Right.
Clearly, when the ordinance was established, I don't think the intention was to say that a match or that a lighter would be a violation of that ordinance. So we would not make a charge on that. If you were to be black and white with what the text says, sure. But I think if we travel that one, we open ourselves to some liability that we don't necessarily want to be in. And so we would use it more as to what the ordinance was intended for, as opposed to what it exactly says verbatim. Does that make sense? Yes, sir. It would certainly be discretion.
Okay.
At 20 miles an hour, though, there's no
No,
discretion
no,
to give to.
You're busted. Anything else?
No, that's it. Fine, thank you.
Mr. Ward?
Yeah, just a couple things. In 2008, when the city passed a workplace only, and right after that, that's when I decided to discontinue my hiatus from public service, decided to get back involved. Because they said it's going to be workplace only, it's for the restaurants. Everybody goes, well, that, sounds pretty reasonable. What are you going any further? No, this is it, just the workplace only. And I said, they're going to come back. And it has. I'm not sure, maybe the police chief can help me with this, or maybe Desiree, but I've heard that Folly Beach doesn't even have a smoking ban in the restaurants. They leave it up to the restaurant owners to decide whether they allow smoking in their establishments. Do you know?
I do not know.
Yeah, I'm not aware of, sir.
I'll follow up with it.
It would be something that I think state law would outline some of that as well.
Yeah, so they leave it up to the restaurant owners instead of government regulation. No one's mentioned how we're going to pay for this. Is it in the budget? Is it in the budget to fund this?
The budget has several provisions that include funds for signs, general signs that are used at the discretion and the need. We did a quick calculation of should this be approved by council. Our intention is to include signage in the existing beach access signs that we have been implementing for the past 3 years, the wooden signs. We have been holding off, knowing that this was in the pipeline, we have been holding off from ordering a sign that includes the recently approved changes to the plastics ordinance. So we would add in that sign, we would add a new section for smoking if that were the case. The cost for those signs are roughly $45. They can be installed by our Public Works personnel. And we have 12 signs, so we're talking roughly $600 in total.
That's all, just 12 for all the access?
Well, our intention is not to add additional signs. It would be, obviously, the education campaign would be including social media, the website. We would be sharing information to the local short-term rental management companies, the businesses, our local media.
When that printing cost involved there? Staff time?
certainly with staff time, but it would be all bundled together with the messaging about plastics, which we've already started.
Okay, I have another question. In January 1st, 2020, we have this all-encompassing plastic ban, right?
Yes.
Not all encompassing.
Yes, not.
It's fairly specific.
Packaging.
Packaging and aren't cigarette filters plastic?
It's different than I mean, again, theoretically, you would say that's a littering issue, but it's just so hard to enforce that. You know,
I talked to the police chief, and he told me in 2017 we had 0 citations for littering. 2018 we had 2, and so far this year we've had 0. So that's 2 over 3 years. We've had, I'm not too talking. I'm just, it's my turn to speak. Just something I observed. I haven't heard anything here to convince me to support it.
Okay, I'm gonna give my 2 cents worth. And like Mr. Moy and Mr. Bell, y'all have been a couple of days and a couple of days. I've been a couple of weeks going back and forth, even to the point of sending an email to my friend Kelly Thorbenson at the aquarium, because I am a major advocate for our environment. But I have been hounded by calls and emails from residents. And so I've spent a lot of time on the internet, me and the internet, Google everything. Cigarette butts are 98% plastic. What do you call it, cellulose acetate? I mean, why can't we incorporate that into our all-inclusive plastics ban as a way, not having another law, but this is inclusive of our plastics ban. Plus, we already have a litter law on all Palm's books. So I hate to have a new law, but we got one coming up that we can manage between now and January 1st by adding cigarette butts or cigarettes with plastic in them, which all of them are, and enforcing our littering law and using the media and social media to get the word out there that we don't want it. I mean, I feel horrible. I'm a non-smoker. I hate to be around cigarette smokes. If I am around cigarette smoke, I go home and take a shower. But I just hate another law on the book. And so I've been going back and forth, and that's all I've got to say. Everybody gets a chance to speak 2 times through the lake. Susan, yes, ma'am?
Well, I think to answer your suggestion that we lump cigarette butts in with the plastics ordinance, I'm glad that we passed the plastics ordinance, in effect limiting what some people can bring to the beach. However, this particular approach is unique and can be effective, much more effective, unfortunately, even though we've added the strength of law and asked people not to bring certain things to the beach like plastic bags. We have so much more potential to eliminate a huge source of toxic litter at our beach by going at it in this unique way of stopping smoking, which we haven't discussed as much, does create a problem of smoke that affects and impacts the people that are around. And let's remember the concentration of people at Front Beach. We are directing people and want our visitors to go to Front Beach. They are crowded in oftentimes together there. When somebody is smoking, it impacts the people around them, and then when they leave cigarette butts behind, it affects the people who are coming in behind them. It is very difficult, and I think the chief will again verify. The reason that we do not have enforcement of plain litter laws is because it is extremely difficult to see someone in the act of littering. Can you talk more about that?
Certainly. I can certainly attest to the fact that littering law is a difficult law to enforce. As a matter of fact, throughout my career, I can count on one hand how many times I've made that charge. They just, typically people don't commit those crimes in front of you, kind of like they don't commit burglaries in front of us. You know, they typically don't want to do something they know they're going to get caught for. Everybody knows you can't litter, but it's easy when we're not there to throw it down. And litter does plague our beach. I've seen it. I've gone out here when I've worked in the weekends and seen it out there and help pick some of it up. So it's frustrating in the fact that we don't enforce it. So what we have done, if I can address that part, while we have had limited enforcement on it, one thing that I've noticed in the 4.5 months that I've been on board is that we had a limited presence on the beach in general as a police department. And for a community who has majority of our tourists that come to the beach, which would be the people that typically are involved in activity that's not okay, or just where a large crowd is and concerns for safety, we need to have a presence out there. So even prior to this ordinance coming forth, I had already approached Ms. Fragoso to ask her about taking some of our beach service officers. We're allotted 10 in the budget. And what we've done in the last years is to not hire those 10, and we keep the numbers smaller because some people say it's easier to manage them. What I saw as an opportunity to hire all 10 and take some of them and assign them, instead of doing parking enforcement, to actually on the beach, out there patrolling. Give them the ability to issue municipal ordinance summons for littering, for alcohol on the beach, or those other violations that are out there. Hopefully there is not a need to write those tickets. Hopefully their presence would deter a lot of that crime from taking place, because most people don't commit crimes in the presence of an officer. So littering is difficult. It is by far one of the more difficult charges to make, and it is different than a dumping statute. Dumping statutes can take investigations and have a follow-on arrest or charge from that. That's completely different than somebody throwing down a piece of trash and littering. They are harder to make, and I think a lot of folks have already talked about that. There are programs we can do to work on those, and I'm not saying that we shouldn't work on that. We certainly do. It is a weakness that we have that I think we can do better on, and that's why we're moving personnel to the beach where we can work on that.
Can you speak, though, to the fact that smoking is a much easier to detect activity that would make it
Certainly.
easier to enforce or to be self-policing?
Certainly. So obviously when somebody's smoking on the beach, there is a cloud of smoke that goes up, and there's an odor associated with it. You know, much like if somebody were to light up marijuana, we get calls for those things because that's illegal. People smell it, they see it. It's easier for people to tell us. If an officer is patrolling or somebody's just out on the beach, it's easy to see that smoke going through the air or to just smell it in the area. As I've cautioned in all of the meetings, though, I would not bank on a lot of tickets being issued for it. I think the approach would more so be, ma'am, sir, you can't smoke on the beach. Please step off and smoke out off of the beach, off of the public access. If they then decided to just disagree, an ordinance would give an officer the ability to take action because they refuse to do so. You know, and that would be the benefit to that. Smoking is easier to see than littering because, again, littering, people just don't do it in front of you. Smoking, people are going to do it right there. It's harder to hide it because of the smell and the smoke and the fire that comes from the cigarette.
And if we simply had a resolution asking people not to smoke, would you feel comfortable having your officers going up to talk to people about that on the beach?
That a resolution would not give us a legal reason to approach somebody and stop them in what they're doing. We could certainly go try to talk to them, but they could also turn and walk away from us, and we have no reason to say anything further than that.
Okay, is there anybody else has a second comment to say?
Can I just finish? I'll just sum up that a law, an ordinance, as we would all understand, is a much stronger way of approaching the situation. We have a unique tool that we can use to, based on what we're seeing in other communities that have enacted this, eliminate tens of thousands of cigarette butts. Well, surely not eliminate all of them, but certainly reduce the numbers where simply adding it into our other ordinances is not going to be nearly as effective. And for all the people that feel that we're talking about civil liberties, above all, everybody has the right to go to the beach and enjoy a clean, smoke-free beach. Everyone has that right, and we should all remember that.
Okay.
Excuse me.
Yes, ma'am.
something for the chief. Now, this smoking ban on the beach is all 7 miles, right? Breach Inlet, you've got 5 officers, beach officers probably on the beach. In front of the county beach, can we police that? And also in front of Waldoons, you're going to be walking 7 miles all the way up and down with your other duties, trying to look for people that are misbehaving. And we're calling smoking misbehavior, basically. And my contention is that it's not going to be effective. You're trying to change people's health habits. It would be just like telling our restaurants, you can't serve any red meat because it's bad for their heart. Just think about how far are we going to go to make people their individual health issues. We can't dictate those health issues. The litter problem, I can understand. And we can put in place those things that can clean up that litter. Now, if we also want to go forward and say, we really want to educate the whole public on how hazardous smoking is, I mean, it says it right on the pack, but that doesn't stop people, then we can establish that we want to have a concerted education effort. And we have a month of education, and we have flyers that our police can hand out. We take that kind of a step rather than a law to try to change people's health habits.
Yes, ma'am. Your second time.
My second. So I would just say this is a litter issue. That's how I'm approaching this. So I'm not saying, and the red meat versus cigarette smoking, to me, it's just, this is affecting everybody else, not just you eating the red meat. So that doesn't really work for me. But I think it's, we just need to have the political courage to set the standard really high for us to have a clean, safe beach. And to me, that's what this is about. We know it's a problem. We can do better. Why not do better and say no more? We're not going to be the ashtray. No more. And that's, how I look at it. And it's time, and it's not an original thought. Other places have done it. It works. People do self-police. I mean, if somebody lit up a cigarette on an airplane, people would think, are you crazy? I mean, that's 20 years ago, that wasn't weird. So in another 20 years, I think our kids will be saying, I can't believe people used to smoke on the beach. That's crazy. We're just ahead of the curve, but we need to push the curve.
Thank you. Mr. Moore.
Thank you. I think I'm going to respond to something that you said, Mr. Mayor, in terms of lumping in to the existing plastic ban the cigarette butts. If we're banning that from the beach, you're banning smoking on the beach. Yes. by proxy. The problem that I see with that is you're not sending the message clearly. So folks, it's really difficult to convey that educational component to the smokers on the beach. And I want to keep reiterating, this is about litter. We're all trying to solve the litter issue, and I don't doubt that anybody up here is trying to solve that. So I think everyone here is in the right place in terms of, we have an issue. No one can deny we've got a cigarette butt issue. We all agree on that. The question is, how do we address it most effectively? Our plastic ban is not going to send the message that folks need to stop dropping their butts on the beach, because folks don't think that it's plastic. Even if we put it in the ordinance, it's not going to reach out there. The message that we're sending with the smoking ban is, you can't treat the beach like your personal ashtray. This is a public place that you need to respect. And unfortunately, and it is unfortunate, that there are so many people who are inconsiderate and ruin it for the people who are responsible, like Rusty, and I think most of the residents on this island are respectful. The problem with the 1 month concentrated educational campaign is it's reaching mostly the people who are responsible. The folks who are coming here from not nearby or from the surrounding area, they're probably not going to catch up on that education, or it's going to, to me, education has to be rolled into it, but it's not the panacea. This isn't the panacea, but this is the strongest message that we can send, that our beach is not your ashtray.
Thank you.
Just one other, somebody else.
Yes, sir.
And mine's more of a point of order. Councilmember Smith brought up at the beginning, because we're minus one person who unanimously moved this through public safety. As a point of order, if you have a deadlock here, is the issue, it will never come up again in this ordinance. Am I correct? A tie is a no? I'm just...
A tie goes to the negative vote.
So it goes to the negative vote. So the question I have for all of council is, minus a member, do we want to potentially risk a negative vote? Or do we want to have a full council weigh in by having another, full council vote on somebody who voted for
You have
us?
5 people here, we could vote on it.
I understand that.
But we can also make a motion to defer, correct?
Well, city council can, y'all can make a motion to defer first reading until next month. That's certainly an option. We've done it, y'all have done it in other ordinances. That's available to you all.
Whoever made the motion in a second, that's up to y'all.
So the motion that y'all have, the motion that we have on the table is to
Discuss, I'm sorry. So, do I hear a
I just wanted to follow up with
Yes,
one
sir.
more thing on this, and just to wrap up my second comment. We are, in come January 1st, we are going to have stop possession of plastics on the beach.
That's correct.
Incorporate a number of things. And previously, we had stopped the point of sale of plastics as well in grocery stores and restaurants and styrofoams and those products as well. And honestly, the idea of having political courage was to pass this thing. I mean, I think having political courage would be to stop point of sale cigarettes. If that's really what your intention is, to keep it off, why not amend your motion to stop it at a point of sale, as you would with your plastics ban? I mean, if you're really claiming political courage, then take that one to the bank.
I'd like to, can I respond to that?
So that was the end of my second retort.
Yeah,
We'll be with that.
I think you've had 3, and everybody's had 2, or...
I've had 1.
Do you want another one?
No, I don't want
Anybody else for beyond 2? Everybody's had 2?
Mm-hmm.
I'd like to make a motion that we defer this first reading vote until November, when our full committee, who recommended this unanimously, is present.
So you made the motion to defer.
We have a motion.
No,
we're not.
No, all that was for discussion.
Yep, we're good.
And
I'll
discussion
second
is
your
over.
motion to defer.
A first to defer, a second to defer. Any discussion?
I'll just say, out of respect to the committee, who has been working on this for 7 months, I think that our full voice should be considered and weighed in on. Unfortunately, our third member is not here.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, ma'am.
when there was a committee meeting in which this same council member was unable to attend, and the vote was deferred because he wasn't present, he said, "Don't ever defer because one person is absent."
Yeah.
Shaylin.
You could say that.
Okay, so do we have a motion? You have a motion to defer?
Yes.
Yes, I'm sorry, I missed you.
That's all right. When is the next council meeting? What day in November?
November 19th,
Okay. So that's the week before
Thanksgiving.
Thanksgiving.
We have
What if
2
somebody's
meetings in
sick?
the same day. We have Ways and Means and Council on the same
All
day.
night, yeah. So do we have a motion to defer and a second?
I'll make another question.
Okay, I'm sorry.
What if somebody's sick that night? Can't come? You defer it again?
You know, as we heard before, he said never defer. But
I think, given the weight of this resolution and the study, and respect to the weight of this ordinance and the work that has been put into it by the committee, that's my request.
I have a motion, we have a second. Any other discussion on that? All those in favor of the motion to defer to next month signify by raising your hand and saying aye.
Aye.
We have 4. All those against signify by saying nay and raise your hand.
Nay.
4. So that motion fails. So now we go back to the original.
There's no original.
There is no original. Okay. So it failed.
It failed the motion to defer. Now, anybody can entertain a motion to approve by title only, ordinance 2019-18.
Point of order? If there's no motion for this ordinance, one way or another, what happens to it?
You mean if someone makes a motion, there's no second?
No, well, or there's no motion, period.
It's already on the agenda as a first
We've been
reading.
down this path before. This is
You have
our
to-
legal counsel.
You have to approve the first reading.
It's the same thing as voting to defer.
So the committee could return with this at the next meeting?
With a new version, or
But that's second reading, isn't it?
No.
it fails essentially tonight, the only way it could come back is through committee again. So it could technically come back again.
It could. It has. Obviously, it has.
Is that our legal opinion tonight that we can?
We just need to.
Well, I mean, I don't, there was a motion to defer that failed.
Right.
And there's still an action item on the agenda.
For first reading.
For first reading by title only.
Right.
After first reading is approved, it goes back to committee.
So we have
For second reading.
we have to approve or disapprove first reading.
Yes.
We have to approve or disapprove first reading.
Correct.
If it fails first reading, then it doesn't come back as second reading.
Okay. Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
To approve.
Second.
Okay. Any discussion? Sorry. And the motion was again, just to be clear.
Wait a
For
minute.
the planet.
The motion was again.
To approve first reading by title.
Okay. All those in
Well,
favor?
I would like to just, one point that was brought up was the discussion of spending $60,000 on a machine that could help comb the beach of cigarettes. That would not count the labor that would be involved in doing that. But there are environmental concerns about doing something like that and removing the natural debris that are a part of the ecosystem that I think you would hear from many conservationists that would caution you strongly against making that kind of investment in something that could potentially harm the ecosystem while you are trying to help it. So,
Mr. Mayor, sorry,
Yes, ma'am.
could we have a clarification on the vote? The vote, as the motion is to approve the first reading.
That's correct.
So a positive vote is to approve it.
Right.
Correct.
A negative vote is
Is
not to approve it.
Right.
Okay, all right, just want a clarification.
Oh, I missed one comment that I did want to make because I visited Mr. Google too, and there's a lot of research out there and a lot of findings, and the vast majority, there's some peer-reviewed academic articles as well as just sort of qualitative reactions that folks have had, and the overwhelming majority of them say that these ordinances are incredibly effective at what we're trying to achieve. So when we look at our goal, which is reducing cigarette butt litter, that is our goal here. This is objectively the most effective way to do it. That's all.
And I think, Mr. Mayor, I think we're trying to reduce litter in general.
Yes, sir. And I'm just going to make a comment that depending on how this goes, no matter what, I'm going to find a way
To reduce litter.
to eliminate smoking on the beach in a different direction. But anyway, having said that, all those in favor of the motion to approve coordinates discussion I'm reading the wrong one, I'm sorry. Ordinance amending Title VI, Health and Sanitation, Chapter Smoking on the Workplace. All those in favor signify by saying aye and raise your hand.
Aye.
All those against signify by saying nay and raise your hand.
Nay.
Okay. We'll find a way. Okay, miscellaneous business. Next meeting is 6 p.m. Tuesday, November 19th. And do I hear a motion to go in executive session for discussion of restaurant negotiation, proposed contractual agreements related to the Marina restaurant lease.
All of them.
Is there a second?
But they're really strict.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank everyone for coming tonight. This was a very
They have
emotional,
dispensers.
hard thing to do.
They're like,
Thank
the
you.
old-fashioned ones that